boutique valve amps haven't really evolved a huge amount.
You're right. It hasn't changed that much. But a lot of times it hasn't changed that much because people don't want to see it change. You might come up with something that's really cool and stuff, and people are like, "Oh, I wish it had gold panel on it, or I wish it had this," because they want to like have it look like those old amps from the past.
How do you approach that product development from an innovative perspective when you're very much founded on this vintage thing?
I don't think anyone really wants innovation in it. I mean, like severe innovation. There always seems to be harking back. Hey, this guitar sound from 1972 that so-and-so played, man, I really love his tone. No one ever says, hey, this record from 2025, I really love this tone on this record I just heard. Even if a person is using a model or live, they tend to want, if they're using, say, the model of the BE100, they tend to wonder what a BE100 sounds like, and they wind up buying one. And they have it. They might have it at home, but they wind up buying it for recording or doing different things. So sometimes modelers will drive sales of amplifiers.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Products of Music podcast. In this episode, I'm joined by Dave Friedman, who is the founder of Friedman Amplification. He's the man behind signature tones of rock icons like Eddie Van Halen, Steve Stevens, and Jerry Cantrell. Dave has been modding, building, and repairing guitar amplifiers for the stars for over 25 years. His innovative designs have made him legendary in the boutique guitar amplifier market. And in this episode, we're going to explore his approach to product development at the company, as well as explore the analog versus digital debate and what he thinks about where the industry is going, as well as some general insights for those interested in guitar amplification technology and entrepreneurship in this area. If you're new to the podcast, please make sure to subscribe on YouTube if you're not already, as well as follow on your preferred podcast platforms if you like the audio version. It's really appreciated and helps grow the channel in the future, and ensure we get really great guests as well, so thank you. But here is my interview with Dave Friedman of Friedman Amplification. Just as a means of an introduction for people who are less familiar with the Friedman brand, can you give a bit of a rundown about your journey to founding the company and some of the key milestones in a kind of, I guess, Cliff Notes version?
Cliff Notes version. Okay, so I moved to California when I was 18 or 17, 18, I guess 18 years old. Started working for a company called Andy Brower Studio Rentals in the music industry. Fast forward, started building guitar rigs when a guitar rig builder left his organization that was doing stuff for him. I just I can do this, and I did it. That started my career, in the music industry, so to speak. I built guitar rigs for every notable guitar player you can possibly imagine.
You can name drop a few.
Eddie Van Halen, Jerry Cantrell, Steve Stevens, man, it goes on and on and on. I've forgotten half the ones I've built stuff for over the years, because this is like 30 plus years now, been building these rigs, and we continue to do that still. And then let's see, not fast forward too much. I was then involved in a store in Los Angeles, which was a high-end retail store called Makin' Music. They were also in Chicago, really high-end boutique gear and guitars and stuff. So I've been around, one aspect of vintage instruments through, boutique stuff, all pretty much in my entire life, and around professionals, working in the studios and stuff all life when there were a lot of records going on and a lot of things. So fast forward a little bit further, got involved with Egnator amps early on in the early 90s. We kind of became partners on a few products that existed at the time. IE4 guitar preamp. Guitar preamps were very popular at the time. Then later, TOL amp. I knew Bruce from when I lived in Michigan. I'm from Michigan originally, Detroit area. And early 2000s, I made an amp for guitar player Billy Howardell from A Perfect Circle, which was affectionately known as the Naked amp, because at the time it had no marking, so it made sense to call it the Naked amp. He still uses that amp till currently. so,
Wow.
so
So the test of
and
time.
then yeah, a long time. And then let's see, I was involved with a few other amp companies. I started getting into amps, making amps, doing things over this period of time, starting with Egnator. He was sort of a mentor to a lot of that stuff. But really later, in the 2000s, I started really getting into amps and stuff. So then I did design with Buddha amps, the Super Drive series amps. The front end of that was my concoction. I did something with Blankenship amps for a while called a Variplex amp, which was kind of a take on a Plexi. And eventually, in around 2009, I started making my own amps at first under Marsha as a name. Yeah. And then later, after a cease and desist, it became Friedman. And then fast forward, that was 2009 to now it's 2025, and we're a reasonably large company now, pretty well known for the kind of British toned, hot rodded kind of amp.
How did you pick up the skills as well? Obviously, tinkering with stuff and actually designing or modifying amps requires a certain skill set. So was that kind of just winging it along the way, or is that a
Yeah, you pick it
concerted
up over
effort?
time.
Right.
Yeah, you picked it up over time. I was even as a kid, I was into kind of tools and things, and learning. I was inquisitive about how things worked and how
Mm.
and all that. So it was in my DNA to you know to to be able to do that. And once you've learned how to solder, and once you've learned how to make your own cables and this and that, it's not that hard. I shudder to think how many actual solder connections I've made over the years. Like early on, when these rigs were being built and stuff, and for 30 plus years, how many 1/4 inch ends did I solder on cables?
A different 10,000 hour rule, isn't it? 10,000 solder connections, maybe.
I mean, I had different employees over the years too that would help with the rigs, of course, and still to this day, and also equally them. I mean, we used to have to make before the onset of power supplies that were like I think the first commercially available well done power supply was a Voodoo Lab Pedal Power 2,
Mm.
or Pedal Power at the time. Actually, it wasn't even the 2. And that was the first isolated multi-channel power supply in the market. Before then, we were drilling boxes and making power supplies and stuff, and they weren't completely isolated power supplies or anything, but we were making these things, and boy, I mean, I've drilled a lot of holes also in my life. I'm really a metal worker is what I found I'm
Yeah, that's
saying.
true.
It's yeah. Now I can drill a hole in the box without measuring in anything and get it perfectly straight.
Yeah. Well, I mean, taking all those skills and that kind of other gap, which was that the moment that you went from being an employee to an employer, I suppose, or building your own brand and your own product. What was the key, I guess, catalyst for that happening? How did you leverage what you learned and the network you created?
So the key was I sort of had the ear of everyone already because I had already established a career by that point of making
Mm,
guitar rigs. So it made it a lot easier to put certain amps in people's hands that you were building guitar rigs for, that was, to check out and stuff. And, I always think you can build an amazing product that's fantastic, but if you don't have the inroads to actually show it to people, nothing's going to happen. It's just, you need both. You need a great product, but you also need the ability to actually put it in people's hands, because it sort of then legitimizes the product in a lot of people's eyes. Oh, Jerry Cantrell's using them. Oh, okay, let me check it out. It
mm,
it sort of legitimizes the product. We were never like giving the product to anyone. We never gave anything away to anyone. They always wanted to buy it then after
mm.
they heard it.
So, what was the very first product that you launched under your own Friedman brand?
Under the own Friedman brand, it was the original what became the BE 100, which was originally called a Marsha. So
Hmm.
they were real custom made at the time, and you could have different options and stuff ordered with different options and things. Later, it became more standardized, and there's been a million iterations of it over time. And currently, it's the BE 100 Deluxe.
Hmm.
Um, that was the starting point. I think we did the little 20-watt Pink Taco amp, maybe close second to it pretty early on, and then also the Dirty Shirley amplifier pretty early on. And those are kind of core. The BE sort of sound and the Dirty Shirley sort of sound are the core amps. The two schools. One is more vintagey, one is
Mm.
more like hard rock or heavier.
Would you say vintage is that kind of warm, more analogy, kind of dynamic kind of sounds?
Kind of fat and round and not an extreme amount of gain, but a decent amount of gain. That
Mm.
was kind of the Dirty Shirley was based on a JTM 45 power section, and it had a different front end with a gain and a master on it. But it's a amp that'll work really well with strats and things. That's real round. It's real fat. It's maybe dark even a little bit, but a lot of people love it for like a strat or something because it's just sort of the bright strat. It kind of works well, you know. It works well with humbuckers too.
What was the product development approach you took back then, and what is it now? What are the differences back then when you're first designing those amps, and how you're thinking about product development these days?
Well, I mean, back back then, it was just a sound in my head that I sort of wanted to recreate in an amplifier that could be used at any volume. So it wasn't required to crank it on 10
Mm.
and go, and maybe also have more gain. And often I make amplifiers that have more gain than I would want personally.
The numbers all go to 11.
And apparently, occasionally, sometimes not enough gain for certain people still. But that's a whole different topic.
Sure.
um, how do I approach it differently now? I mean, it's still sort of the same idea. Like you have an idea for a product. A lot of times now it's packaging it differently, sort of, in certain respects. Like we came out with our IR series of pedals, which are kind of direct solution pedals. And it's still using some of my classic circuits that I've developed over time that people love, but then they're put into a different package for like a tube direct kind of
Mm.
solution. Simple. The idea behind that was, tube sound, simplicity, could add it to your pedal board, and then you have a direct solution without going down the modeler route or something like that. It's a lot faster and simple. Plug it in, turn the
Mm.
knobs a little bit. Hey, there's a sound. Oh, I'm done. You know?
Yeah, I have a quad cortex behind me, and I can, yeah, option paralysis is definitely one issue.
Yeah. I mean, if you can infinitely tweak from patch to patch, whatever you want, you will sit there and do it. How long will you do that for? And how many days? And then you do the gig and you go, that wasn't right. Then you have to do it again and again and again. And are you ever really happy? Totally. There's a simplicity of like, hey, I like this channel on this thing and I turn the knobs this way and well, that's done. Or if it's not quite right, let me just turn the treble up a little bit. And you're done. You're playing instead of tweaking.
How do you innovate? How do you approach that product development from an innovative perspective when you're very much founded on this vintage thing?
Okay, you can add all sorts of options and stuff, but we're not necessarily talking about going digital and doing complete digital solutions and stuff. I don't think anyone really wants innovation in it. I mean, like severe innovation. There always seems to be harking back. Hey, this guitar sound from 1972 that so and so played. Man, I really love his tone. No one ever says, hey, this record from 2025, I really love this tone on this record I just heard. It's not, it doesn't really happen. I even young kids and stuff are looking back. That's why you never see anyone different on guitar magazines or anything. I mean, guitar magazines are kind of going out of style, so to speak. But very rare to even see someone even relatively new. You do occasionally, uh, but they're still they're still putting the same damn people on the cover.
It's funny. It reminds me of Brian Wampler in the last episode I spoke with. He mentioned that to him, at least, when he listens to music from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and all the guitar tones, there was this very unique sound to every guitarist. And
Mhm.
nowadays, maybe because the digital side has taken it to where it has gone, but he hears very, very similar tones in a lot of guitarists, and having that uniqueness is just not there as much as it used to be.
That's absolutely true. So, if everyone's using, let's just say everyone's using an Axe Effects or something, they're using the same algorithms in the Axe Effects. Maybe they're using my amp, or my amp's generally really popular in the Axe Effects generally. It used to be you had to create your guitar tone because there was limitations on the gear that was made at the time. So, like, maybe, okay, let's say you're at the time, the Marshall of choice was a 2203 JMP master volume amp. Okay. But that's not enough gain for my music. Okay. What do I use? Okay. Well, I used a Boss Super Overdrive pedal, but I also had this other pedal, and I found this cool sound, this Boss flanger. And if I turn all the one knob on 10 and turn all the other knobs at 0, and I just leave it on with that Boss Overdrive, it's this sound. They would find their tones and stuff out of experimenting with what was available at the time. So now, if you just stick all that stuff in an Axe Effects or something, and oh, here's this high gain amp, I hear this is good, so let's use this, and everyone's using the exact same thing.
Mm.
You wouldn't have had guitar sounds like Eddie Van Halen's guitar sound, or Ty Tabor from King's X. He used a Lab Series amp with a Fender Elite preamp into it and a MIDI verb. What? This goes back to, let's say, Richie Blackmore using a tape machine in front of his Marshall as a preamp, so to speak. I knew people that used a Porta Studio in front of an amp because they liked what happened running through it and how it boosted their amp.
Mm.
So yes, I agree with Brian wholeheartedly. You're making a record now, you might not have access to a lot of amps. So what do you do? Where are you going to get them? What are you going to do? So if you happen to be working with a cool producer that has a bunch of amps, then okay, you can, go down that path of layering tones with different amps and things. But if you don't, you're going to try to make this on a budget, and you're going to make it with your Axe Effects because that's what you own.
The digital analog argument has been there for decades at this point, whether it
Yeah.
was rack gear in the 80s. Is it different these days? Do you see the threat increasing compared to, I don't know, 20 years ago, 30 years ago?
Yes, sure. I mean, the fact of quiet stages and different things like that have sort of exasperated that problem. I'm not a fan of quiet stage. I always say, give me the sound guy, and he'll say, oh, I can make it sound amazing if I just have a quiet stage and everything direct, and it'll sound great out front. And then you hear what he does, and it sounds awful. It doesn't, I mean, you know, if it's gonna sound so great, then make it sound great,
Mm.
because
Yeah.
but it doesn't. So, I believe there should be, even if it's moderate, there should be some stage volume. I kind of firmly believe in some sort of tube-based thing. We created a tube-based solution that can go direct, and it's wonderful. It sounds great, and it really kind of reacts. People have told me, that it feels right, feels like a tube amp. I also find it interesting, even if person is using a model or live, they tend to want, if they're using, say, the model of the BE100, they tend to wonder what a BE100 sounds like, and they wind up buying one. And they might have it at home, but they wind up buying it for recording or doing different
Mhm.
things. So sometimes modelers will drive sales of amplifiers.
Interesting. Yeah, the other way around. Yeah.
Yeah. I've always wondered about a metal band using all direct with modelers and stuff. I think it affects how you play. I don't think if you have a loud amp behind you, you feel a certain way. You feel a certain aggression and you feel a certain way. And I don't think you can get that same feel just on a set of in-ears. And I think you get very isolated in your ears also.
Mm.
Isolated from the band. I don't think you're really playing with the band as much as you are, you know.
So yeah, just go back into the product development approach then, because I'd like to get a bit of an understanding about exactly how you think about product development at the moment. You know, is it you're at home, you're walking around the garden, you think of an idea and okay, right, that's something I'd like to do some work on. Is it people come to you and say, you know, Dave, I need something designed. I've got an idea in my head. I want you to get the tone for me, and then that becomes a product. You know, what is the typical way these days that happens?
All of the above, kind of. Often, you know, I'm getting feedback from people all the time because I do actually all the customer service for Friedman. So I get a lot of inquiries about, hey, you ever think about doing something like this? And,
Mm,
you know, or could you do something custom for me? And I want this. Or, you know, or often, you know, you've come up with a product and maybe you're going to do several versions of a product, you know, like you're going to do uh, a 100-watt flagship amp, and then you're going to do a 20-watt amp or something for people that can't afford the big flagship or have no use for a 100-watt amp.
mm,
Or you're going to do, you know, maybe a new Synergy module that'll go, you know, in the Synergy lineup from Friedman. Or you're going to try to address the same sound in a pedal format. So often you've come up with one thing and now it's going to morph into four products or something. Or, you know, you get the idea in your head, hey, I'd like to make a vintage style amp. You know, I want to do this. And so I did the Plex amp that I did, which is a full sort of four input style plexi style amp. You know, then eventually I will have a Vox sort of style amp because I really don't think a great Vox exists right now. You just get these ideas and you might want to do it, or you've modified something for someone that they specifically requested something and you're like, hey, this is pretty cool. Maybe it should be a product, you know, and
mm.
you know, you do that. But you know, the problem you have as a company though is you need to constantly come up with product. I mean, as a larger company, you need to constantly be producing income, so to speak, you know, and you need to constantly, you're on a treadmill of making products.
Sure.
Any larger company is on a treadmill of making products. You know, what's new next year? What's new next year? What's new next year? You know, and that can be a lot after a while. You know, you start to go, "Well, what am I going to do next year?" Especially if you have a big product line already. You know,
Have you ever launched something that's just flat out failed or just really missed the mark?
flat out failed, not flat out failed. There were things that we've done that haven't been huge things. We did a line of tube pedals for a minute, two different
Mm,
tube pedals. They were really cool pedals, but in the history of all companies, tube pedals don't really sell. It's sort of an interesting phenomenon.
mm,
Um, Although they were cool, they eventually just went away.
mm,
We did sell all the ones we made. I mean, we weren't stuck with anything, but you know, we discontinued it because it just wasn't selling. I mean, if something doesn't sell that well, you discontinue it.
mm. What do you think that was?
I think it's just a tube pedal thing. It's weird. They're big. They're a little bulky. People, you know, this is a something that's happened with every company that's come up with tube pedal over the years. Eventually, it just goes away. This is like I'm not exactly sure why, to be honest.
What is it on the other side? What's the biggest success that you've had in terms of products? You know, is there one standout which just has been the success story? Is it still kind of the B100, or is there something nowadays which is really your, for want of a better phrase, cash cow?
Well, our B100 has sold historically really well over the years and continues still to sell pretty well. it's kind of hard. It's a culmination of all sorts of things. So we have a lot of 20-watt amps; those sell really well. Our Runt series amps have sold really well over the years because they're a little lower priced. Um, the the B100 for a flagship amp has sold really well over the years. The small box and the twin sister now still continually sell. A lot of times you sell really well on newer products. Like we sold extremely well on the Plex 50 that we did. To the tune. I mean, what's extremely well? Okay, it's still a high priced amp. So I mean, I think the Plex 50 we've sold maybe 600 of them or something, which is actually doing pretty well.
Mm.
The B100 constantly has orders over the years. It never kind of stops. As far as pedals go, I mean, our BEOD pedal that we came up with a million years ago now has sold extremely well and continues every quarter to sell really well. So it's just a mainstay of a pedal that keeps selling.
I'm trying to picture the product development approach for you. We talked about your ideas and those things that work well and haven't worked so well. But after you get the idea, the next day, what does that process look like from taking that idea to actually launching that product to market?
I guess it depends on the product. It's generally speaking, how it goes is you have an idea. Okay, we've all decided we're going to do this now. Then I work with a PCB designer that I work closely with, and we design the PCB together, and we get a prototype chassis and a prototype PCB and wire it all up, see if it works, see what mistakes we made. Tweak it, make some changes, maybe make another prototype. We get to a final prototype eventually. Generally it's the second time around, so we've done better over the years. So there's been some amps where it's like 4 prototypes later, and then it's a matter of production. So we have to order the transformers, orders the chassis, order the PCBs, stuff the PCBs. It's kind of can be time consuming to get it into production. Then you have to make enough before you ship. Okay, we need to make at least 100 of these before we start shipping them. Then we have to do, the manuals, the product videos that are going to be done all for launch. We set a launch date, and
Mm.
it's pretty consuming.
So, nowadays, what do you tend to be involved with? Is it mainly just the idea and the prototyping, and then you have the rest of the team, cover the marketing, and were you quite involved in the marketing side of the business as well these days?
Um, I'm involved in everything, kind of, somewhat. I mean, I don't physically build them. We have Boutique Amps Distribution. They're the company that physically builds them. But I'm there every week. I'm overseeing things. I do final testing of all the amplifiers, at least.
Mm.
It gets a signature and my initials on it, every amp that leaves the building. So I'm really involved with that.
Mm.
As far as marketing too, yes. I mean, like, most of the marketing has to do with YouTuber videos and stuff these days, that most of that marketing gets done through that.
Mm.
And I do select who's getting the amps to do these
It's got
videos.
the short list.
Yeah. Well, it depends. It could be different people for different styles of amps. So it just
Sure.
depends. You don't want a metal guy to do a vintage amp. It doesn't work, you know. But if it's a metal centric amp, you want him to do it for sure,
On the production side, then, what are some challenges that you're facing today in terms of production? And obviously, the big T in the White House is causing uncertainty with tariffs. You've talked about that at length, I think already, anyway, in terms of tariffs
Yeah,
online.
the
But
tariffs are a mess.
yeah,
I mean, everything is costing more these days. Everything is costing more. Everything has gone up, including insurance.
mm,
It everything, rents, insurance, everything goes up. I mean, the tariffs greatly increase the price of everything. there's not much you can do either, because we're in the electronic industry. So there are no parts made here. Our chassis are made in the US. Our transformers are made in the US. Where all the steel comes from, it varies.
Mm.
But I've been actually told that even US steel is using ingot that makes the US steel from Asia. So,
Right.
in fact, my metal guy told me an interesting thing. So he goes, like, all the scrap metal in the US is melted down for ingot, or all the scrap metal is sent out of the country. It's melted down for ingot, and then they sell it back to us.
Right.
Which is sort of crazy, to make whatever steel that you have here. And I'm like, because I asked him, I go, are you using steel from China or US? He goes, it's the same thing. It doesn't really matter. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. And he explained this whole process to me. But yeah, transformers are made here. Chassis are made here. Wood, I broke this down before for people. Wood comes from Canada. Generally speaking, it's Baltic birch. Tolex, I have no idea where it's actually made. I think some of the Tolex is made in the US by K-Line, and I'm pretty sure they're manufacturing it here. Handles and rubber feet, they're obviously not coming from here. Piping on the amp is not coming from here. All the switches on an amp are coming from Asia. Various sources. Every component on the circuit board, except for our main coupling caps, which are US made caps, Synergy mustard caps, they're made in the US. But literally everything else, including the screws, I don't believe are made here.
So are you thinking any ways to try and bring costs down in light of all that, without having to pass those costs on to the consumer?
At this point, I don't know how to bring the cost down. I mean, in the past that would be offshoring your product. But that's not so viable anymore. So, I mean, there's no way around it. The tariffs has raised all the prices for everyone.
Yeah, I think Brian Wampler also said that for him, he bulk buys a lot of components for his pedals, of course.
Sure.
And the way he described it was a runway, right? You have a certain amount of time left before that stock runs out, and you have to start replenishing with a new one, and then suddenly that's when everything will hit for those cost increases for sure.
Correct.
The runway is probably different for different manufacturers, and depending how much stock they have.
Unfortunately, we buy in bulk, so we buy large quantities of things. So we negotiate a really good price, and even if we negotiate a really good price, even with the tariff tacked onto it, it's actually still a reasonable price. So, I mean, we haven't actually raised our prices as of yet. So we'll see how that goes.
Are there any things that you think of, what you'd have loved to know many years ago when you first started Friedman Amplification, that, if you knew what you knew now back then, it would have either saved you a lot of hours or a lot of money or time? Is there anything that comes to mind?
I mean, like if you go way back, it's like maybe I should have listened to my parents and become a lawyer or something.
Sure, there are some cons to that as well.
It wouldn't be as fun, but I don't know if there's one thing in particular. Look, you're not going to get rich doing this. It's not going to happen. I mean, you might do okay, but I mean, in this day and age, it's not really going to happen. Fortunately, the way we've structured our business is boutique makes the product for us. So we're a licensed brand. We get a percentage of all the production and this and that, but I don't have to run the factory. I don't have to employ the people. I don't have to deal with the workman's comp. I don't have to deal with all this stuff. I would probably go crazy if I did.
Yeah, you mentioned getting rich, as it were, in this industry. It's not going to happen. Why do you think it's not really possible?
Well, okay, you're not making okay, look, so if you're making more consumer-based products, we're making like Ferraris. We're not
Mm,
making your, whatever, snark tuner. Okay. Like okay, like say you have a product, you make a tuner, right? And say it's $20. Okay. And you make $1 of the $20. But if you sell, 3 million tuners at that price, okay, you've made some money, you've made some money. So, you can make money, but it's got to be on more consumer based products, like
mm.
I'm sure, Marshall's made a mint on their Bluetooth receiver things. It's kind of a bit of a travesty, but I, but hey, they've probably made a lot of money off that, or Zounds or whoever it was that was, doing that with them.
Have you thought about doing that more sort of product line, beyond what the day-to-day products that
Yeah,
you do?
it's you have to be a little careful. Like if say you come, I mean, like if you could do some consumer based things that were smaller things, like whatever, like a tuner, like something like that, maybe. If
Mm,
you go down market, say with amplifiers, hypothetically, let's say you um start making a line that's made in China or something, right? And it's much lower cost, and that might be really successful. Could potentially be really successful. Um, but you can't once you do that, you can't go up market again. You're now stuck in the basement all the time. You're not gonna be able to sell your Ferrari anymore.
where do you think the boutique amp market is going in the future?
That's hard. That's hard to predict. I mean, I keep doing it one day at a time here. It's a tough question. I do see some backlash to modelers and certain things. I have seen people go back to using, even if it's a small amp, a small, combo amp with some pedals because they like it better and it just works better for them and it's not so time consuming for them and tweaking and um, I have seen some backlash. I think we've seen like sort of in music, right? You've seen look how vinyl has come back over time from where it was say 10 years ago. There's a big trend for vinyl. It increases every year. So that's going backwards.
Yeah, right.
It really is
Yeah.
going backwards. So why is that happening? Maybe they're missing the feel and touch and being, uh, attached to the music more, so to speak.
Digital detoxing as well. That kind of rise
Yeah,
of
and
yeah.
digital, yeah, it gets a little much after a while, it's
One thing I realized is that I stopped listening to albums, and then as soon as I bought a record player, suddenly I was listening to the entirety of an album, which I hadn't done for years at that point.
right.
And it brought that experience back to me. It was really, really great that I could
Yeah,
experience the albums again and read the cover art and the sleeves, and
yeah.
it's a whole different experience. I definitely agree.
Touch, feel, you can see it's
Mm,
not a screen that you're just changing parameters on, like that's with an amp, you have some feel to it and you can play with the knobs and you can
mm,
look at the amp. I mean, even okay, for me, I grew up in a time visually to me an amplifier is cool. I like how it looks. Uh, just you put a Kemper next to an amplifier and the amplifier looks cool and the Kemper looks I don't know what robot or something. So, I mean, I don't know. I think we'll see kind of in tube amps, I think we're going to see more hybrid approaches to things.
mhm,
That kind of have some digital side to it, but is remaining kind of analog, sort of like what I've done with the IR pedals and stuff. And maybe some
mm.
future releases will have different things like that.
Cabinet simulation is becoming more and more common in valve amplifiers being
Yeah.
released, and beyond the IR and direct to front of house capabilities, what are you thinking about in terms of that hybridization of the traditional analog amp?
That's a good question. I'm not sure yet. Maybe more programmability of the analog circuit. Maybe. Maybe. I don't know how far. Look, a lot of times with technology comes more problems. So like if you have like let's talk about a car. If you have an old truck from 1975, let's say, it's very simple to repair. It generally works forever. It doesn't have a lot of complications. If it is, it's simple to fix. Versus something highly computerized, made today, has all the bells and whistles. And with the bells and whistles generally come issues. There's issues, when you're doing technology too, you're constantly, you better have the person on staff that actually wrote the software for the product, because operating systems update, then the software has to be changed to operate on the operating system that they just screwed up everything for you. Windows is actually the worst with that. They'll make upgrades and disable the USB ports in things, and like it's so with digital comes complications. I mean, anything, a computer has issues, things have issues. The more complicated it is, the more issues there will be, the harder it is to fix. Most of society and technological products have become disposable. You don't fix them. You just throw it away and buy another one. I mean, even computers to some extent,
Do you think buyer expectations have changed a lot for you? Obviously, there's been a consistency, and generally speaking, boutique valve amps haven't really evolved a huge amount.
You're right. It hasn't changed that much. And in fact, but a lot of times it hasn't changed that much because people don't want to see it change. You might come up with something that's really cool and stuff, and people are like, "Oh, I wish it had gold panel on it instead of whatever you made it," or "I wish it had this," because they want to like have it look like those old amps from the past and things. And it's interesting. It's like like a guitar shape, right? The only guitar shape that I know that sort of became accepted, and it took a while, was when Eddie Van Halen first did a guitar with Ernie Ball, and they made this new guitar shape. It was a little Telly-esque at times and not, and it was this new guitar shape. After a while, that shape became accepted. But if you look at guitars in general, the shapes haven't really changed. There's slight different takes on them, but if you come up with this crazy new shape, generally people are just like, "Oh, what's this? I don't like it."
And you go like Gibson example is they start doing innovation work with the tuners
Oh yeah,
and the push pull parts and all this stuff, and inevitably they end up redoing that and just going back to the traditional approach.
yeah, especially Gibson. I mean, Gibson's really tied to one sort of thing. Yeah, maybe that's unfortunate. Maybe we can move on. It's hard though. It's hard. It's really hard. I mean, and as far as form factor and size and stuff, well, a 100-watt amp can only shrink down so small.
Yeah, in light of time running out, one other question I'd like to ask you before I get to some quick fire questions and a couple of community questions I've had come in as well. You obviously have done a lot of different types of products. We talked a lot about the guitar amps, but of course you do guitars, at one point, and you've got the pedals, you've got various ancillary devices, pedal boards. So, what is the thought process around expanding the product range set beyond the core products that you do?
Well, originally, like, pedals were sort of like a no-brainer. We how do you make some pedals that are cool that will do the sort of Friedman sound, but into someone can buy $199 pedal, and get that sort of Friedman sound. Can we do that? Can we make that? We did BOD. That, and that's greatly popular. Now, if I start coming out with phasers and things, I don't really think I'm not a pedal company. People like to buy the Friedman pedals or boost pedals and stuff that are kind of associated with amps and things. I'm not making an octave pedal. I'm not making this as much as I'd like to, and that would be fun. I'd have to almost start a different brand to really do that kind of thing, and that's a whole nother
Mm.
problem. As far as the like the pedal boards and stuff, well, that was a no brainer because I've building rigs forever. So it was a natural progression for me to make these pedal boards and a power supply
Mhm.
and interface box and stuff for the pedal board. But how do you make it kind of a little more consumer based instead of custom like I would do things? So that was a no-brainer. Haven't done cables yet. I'd like to do cables. Although, what do you do different? That's tough. I mean,
Mm.
but you could do a cable line.
Just to wrap things up before I go to the quick fire questions, if you wanted to just share some insights for entrepreneurs out there, people who want to, design their own circuits, whether it's pedals, amps, what are the two or three kind of really useful bits of information that you can share with them, on their journey as they embark on that?
Become a lawyer?
No, the legal stuff.
No, I mean, just go with your gut. Make a great product. You got to have a great sounding product. I don't care. You can have all the marketing in the world, but if the product is shit, it's going to be shit. It's not going to do anything. The very first thing you need is uh, a great sounding product. As far as marketing, you have lots of stuff now. You can market really well with different YouTube personalities and stuff, but you're going to have to pay them, to do these
Mm.
demos, paid promotions or whatever you'd like to call them. They're not reviews necessarily. They're paid demos of your product. So that's really great for a young company or something because these guys can really help promote you. And if the product really comes off as great, this will help sell the product. The other thing is, start small, keep it small as long as you can, because you actually wind up at some point you wind up if you're making money at this, you will make more money if it's small than when you take the next step and make it larger. You'll be
Mm.
larger, but you won't necessarily make any more money. Um, until
Yeah.
you're much, much, much larger, and then you might be making more money,
Mm.
but there's the middle ground's hard. Once you start employing people, once you start, manufacturing and employing people, it gets
Mm.
your money might go down actually. So if you say you have a normal job and like, you can do a part-time business in the music field making some pedals or things, you potentially could do really well, Um, so I would say try to keep it small for as long as you can. If you're having some success at it, still try to keep it small. The minute you start getting overhead, lots of overhead is when it you starts to become maybe a burden.
It reminds me of what Brian said in the last episode as well, that, get those 1,000 true fans, then you can scale
Yeah.
thereafter, but make sure you focus on that core
Yeah.
group first for sure. So yeah, a few quick fire questions for you. What is your current favorite amp from your
Oh
lineup?
God.
I'm sure you get asked this all the time, but
I there's a new favorite. Every new one is the new favorite amp.
Mm.
Uh, that's a good question. I do like the collaboration amps we've done with Jakey Lee a lot. I think they're really cool. The new Jose amp I just made is really
Mm.
cool. Um, favorite, boy, it literally changes all the time. I mean, I really
Yeah,
like
fair enough.
at my core, I really love the Plex amp. That
Mm.
speaks to me the most because that was done off an amp I've owned for years, and I really like that sort of sound.
On the Jakey Lee one, yeah, just doing some research for this podcast, I saw a lot of positive
Oh
comments for that
yeah,
particular
people
amp as
love it.
well. Yeah, one guy I read it was saying, ask Dave why this amp is the best in the world, and something to that effect. So, on the other side, which Friedman amp do you think is the most underrated out of your lineup?
It's one we discontinued, actually. I thought we made this amp called the Bucks and Betty, and it was mostly
Mm,
a clean platform amp with reverb, but it was just stunning sounding, though. The clean sounded amazing, and boy, was it a great amp for pedals. It was
mm.
it was fantastic, but people didn't necessarily want to spend $3,000 in just a clean amp, so it kind of eventually went away. Um, Unfortunately, but we have a kind of equally cool clean channel though in our B50 Deluxe and in our Runt 50 amplifiers. They're also very pedal friendly clean channels.
Yeah, what is your all-time favorite non-Friedman amp?
Non-Friedman amp, I have a 50-watt Plexi Marshall amp that I've owned for years that the Plex was based off of. So that would be my number one amp that I've ever owned.
So, last one, if you could collaborate on a new amp with any guitarist, who would it be?
Yeah, I collaborated on a lot of them already. Um, I don't know, Jimmy Page? Maybe Jimmy Page. That would be great. He's still living.
um, so, a couple of quick ones before we wrap up from Reddit,
Yeah.
then. And sorry, I have to ask because it was the most upvoted one. Where the ideas for the names come from? Because I think there's yeah, interest in the naming convention that Friedman takes.
I think a lot of people get the wrong idea. I mean, the original BE100 it's kind of funny. It was named by an employee that worked for me at the time. And the funny thing was when he first said it, the brown eye, I was thinking more of the brown sound. I wasn't really even thinking what he was saying. And it became that thing. Now other names, I mean, okay, so the Pink Taco, that came about because actually there was a restaurant I ate at called the Pink Taco. We actually named it after the restaurant, to be honest.
Mm,
Yes, I understand what that means and all that, but so that one was, it's fun. It's in good fun. It was rock and roll. It was in good fun. As
right.
far as everything else, so like a small box amp is old Marshalls were known as small box Marshalls because the head shell was small, the old 50-watt amps. It was in the vein of that amp, so we called it a small box.
Mm,
That's where that came from. A Dirty Shirley was actually that's more of a pinup reference. So the kind of pinup culture reference. And
mm,
also it was a drink. A Bucks and Betty was also a pinup reference. As far as new things, I mean, I don't think we're naming things like that anymore. Everyone keeps getting because
mm,
it's gotten old at this point. So but there's still core products that are named that. But I don't the pinup references are fine. I think those are cool. The Dirty Shirley became a twin sister because there was two channels of a Dirty Shirley, so that's where the twin sister came out be. Uh So yeah, I mean, but a Plex, that's called a Plex. The Jakey Lee amps are JEL 20 or JEL 50 or JEL 100. The Steve Stevens is an SS 100, Steve Stevens 100. The Jerry Cantrells are normal names. Butter Slacks was Bill Kelleher's nickname, called Butter Slacks. Someone used to call him that. I don't know why. Uh so we're not, the Jose amp that we just came out with is after Jose Arredondo. So it's, I don't think that the naming thing doesn't, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. But on the other hand, the names got you a lot of notoriety and people would talk about the amps all the time. So no press is bad press.
Are there any other amp types or circuits that you would like to try and do a Friedman take of? This person said, I always associate Friedman with Marshall types, but it'd be interesting to see your take on something else as well.
And what other types of amps? I mean, am I supposed to make a Mesa Boogie? I mean, or a high watt, or I'm going to make a Vox. That's coming. Um, you know, people have asked before, are you ever going to make a Dumble style circuit? I'm not really into that, so I can't really.
Mm.
I can't totally. I'm never going to say never, but I can't totally get behind that. Um, there's not. It's not a lot of other choices other than things I've just mentioned.
Does anything kind of grab you? I mean, you mentioned the Vox there. Is that kind of, I guess, your near-term focus? And
Yeah, I mean,
you had the sound that you wanted to chase, and
yeah, I mean, a great sounding Vox. I owned a great sounding top boost copper top Vox from the '60s that is amazing sounding. So I will model it after that. I've modeled the Plex after the Plex 50. There will be a Plex 100 coming. Uh, just because. Probably no one needs the 100, but there'll be some people that want the 100.
more is
More
more.
is more. Yeah, exactly. And I do have an idea for a great Fender style amp that I'd like to do, and maybe that will come into fruition, eventually in the vintage sort of line of my amps.
But when you think about the Vox and the Fender you mentioned there, what are you thinking about to apply your thing to it?
Well, first of all, there might be a twist on it, yeah, but it has to be the best one or the best sounding one. It has to be, if you're gonna make it, you need to make it sound like an old one. You need to make it, unlike most reissue things today, they don't really sound like the originals. And it's really important for me to nail it exactly. My take would be my ears essentially just making it right. And maybe it's simplified. Maybe you're not doing I'm not doing the vibrato channel on the Vox because I don't think anyone cares really. Or you'll do a little different take where you can like blend the channels or something like that or something. I did that on the Plex. So, internally blended. So,
I think that's a good place to finish
yeah.
it. And yeah, Dave, I really appreciate your time and speak on the podcast. Where can people find you online?
FriedmanAmplification.com is the amps website. You can reach out to me directly, friedmanamps@gmail.com. Um, you'll get me if you're sending something to that email address is also on the website. Other than that, our
Mm.
socials too. Although it's better if you email me than try to write a message on a social to me. Feel free to we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or whatever it's called now.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks again, Dave. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.